Hey everybody, it's Sam with Pro Wrestling Overtime, and this is July 17th, and I am giving you New Japan's G1 schedule, the recap from last night, and the preview for tonight. Now, New Japan Pro Wrestling is offering up their G1 Climax 32, and since they've had 32 of these, or getting ready to have 32 of these, you knew opening night was going to, they were going to hit it out of the park. Well, they definitely did, especially with the opening match of the blocks. Now, before the final four matches, they had five matches of tags, and you could see how they were setting this up. They had a guy that became injured, I think they said 3 nights ago, but Tom Lawler was supposed to be in a tag. He ended up being in a singles, and he showed off really well. I think he had maybe a 4 or 5 minute match. The fans seemed to get behind him, which Tom Lawler absolutely loved. He was accompanied to the ring by Royce Isaacs. Then you saw in one match the Bullet Club as a group of different blocks. They were in different blocks, take on another faction. And so you got to see some of the people that you're going to see on Saturday in a tag. Basically, the guys are trying to get in their hits and trying to not get hurt, not wear themselves out, basically. I was excited we got to see Show and Evil, who are a member of the House of Pain, which is a division of the Bullet Club. They are a tag team, and so you get to see a lot of their tag team moves. But basically, the undercard, I'm not going to waste my time and report on because, like I said, it doesn't really matter who wins, who loses. And unless something storyline wise happens, then it's not going to be a big, huge deal. Storyline wise, something did happen as far as Juice Robinson. If you have been following this situation, Juice Robinson, who used to be in NXT as CJ Parker, he is Tony Storm's husband, and he is claiming to be the United States IWGP champion. Somebody wrote in and asked what that means. It's the International Wrestling Grand Prix Championship. United States. Anyway, what happened? I guess it's been about 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago. Juice Robinson was scheduled to perform in Japan. He was to defend his belt. He had an appendicitis attack. He actually went to the hospital and had his appendix removed. He could not make it to Japan. He was in the hospital. It is my understanding that he videoed from the hospital. Anyway, New Japan has strict, clear-cut rules. They stripped Will Osprey of his title earlier in the year, and so they stripped Juice Robinson of the United States Championship. Juice Robinson says he wasn't defeated. He threw a minor temper tantrum. There was a tournament, and Will Osprey has won that. New Japan recognizes Will Osprey as the New Japan Pro Wrestling United States IWGP champion. But here's the thing, when Juice Robinson showed up in Japan, he refused to give the belt to Will Osprey. He refused to give the belt to New Japan Pro Wrestling. At the press conference on Thursday, he did not have it with him. A reporter asked him about that, and he stated it was in the shop. Yes, I'm using fingertip quotation marks. It was in the shop, and it was getting fixed. Will Ospreay's comment back to that was that he didn't believe it and that he wanted his belt. So then what you saw was them spat back and forth. Last night, before his tag match, when Juice Robinson was introduced, he had the United States IWGP Championship with him. And he left with it. I'm not real sure when he gave it up to have the match why they didn't retrieve that from him. But I'm sure Will Ospreay will have something to say about it. So that was a tidbit that happened last night. Another thing that happened last night was between Zack Sabre Jr. and Kenta. And they're on the card tonight. So I will talk to you about that one when we get to it. So last night, you in the block saw an upset right out of the gate. If you listen to the preview last night, I talked about Tanahashi, him being the legend, him holding almost every record in the G1. Last night was his 21st entry into a G1. I talked about how they had only had 32 of them and he had been in 21 of them. Well, Aaron Hanar did not care. Aaron Hanar with the United Empire proceeded pretty much the whole entire match to come out with intensity and pure focus. And he didn't destroy Tanahashi, but he took it to him, and he ended up beating him. So that was a little interesting and a shock right off the bat. It was a definite shock to me because if you listen to yesterday's preview, I wasn't sure that Hinar would be able to pick up a win. And he's already got one. Second match of the night, told you was going to be very good. It pretty much was. It was Jay Switchblade White of the Bullet Club beating Sonata. Now, Sonata came out looking a little scruffy. I'm not used to him with the longer hair and the beard that wasn't cut nice and just looked different. But he came out really wanting Jay White. And Jay White played some games in the beginning, played some mind games. He had Goto with him, and they distracted the referee 3 times, I guess, during the match. This was a pretty good back and forth match. And you saw a lot of stiff shots, which I was really a little shocked at. They do have more stiff shots than American wrestling. However, these were borderline dangerous, almost, shots at each other. Jay White wasn't really happy with Sonata, even though he finally pulled out the victory. The last 2 matches of the night, if you listen to the preview, I told you were going to be bangers. Will Osprey versus El Phantasmo. Both of them played their characters to the hilt. And in this match, especially, you could hear Japan's cheering rule due to COVID restrictions really in effect because these two wrestlers don't like each other. They were screaming and cursing and threatening each other the whole match. And you could actually hear what they were saying the whole entire match with the crowd being very silent and only clapping in certain instances. El Phantasmo, I was talking earlier about the stiff shots. He hit Will Osprey on the brainstem. I don't know any other way to describe it. It was supposed to be the top of the shoulder, lower part of the neck. When they showed it on replay, it definitely wasn't. And I don't know how else to describe it. It is the base of your head where your neck connects, and that is where your brainstem is. If you've ever been hit anywhere near there or had somebody come up from behind and grab you there, you know it's a little sensitive. El Phantasmo, I couldn't tell whether he meant to do that. I don't think he did. However, the rest of the match, you saw Will Ospreay grabbing it at every chance he could get and try and massage it. When he was thrown to the mat or something, he would grab it. He proceeded to turn it up about 10 more notches after getting hit. And these two really went after it, and it was exciting and fast. But final last, Will Ospreay hit the hidden blade and put El Phantasmo down. Next up, you saw Kaz Okada take on Jeff Cobb. This match, like I previewed yesterday, was a rematch, a revenge match for Jeff Cobb. He was undefeated going into the very last match of the block. He thought for sure he was headed to the finals with a chance of winning the G1 tournament, and Okada beat him, making them both tied. And because Okada had beat him, Okada went to the finals where he won the G1 last year. So you could see Jeff Cobb did not come out playing to the crowd, did not come out playing with Okada. That changed about 3 minutes in. Jeff Cobb could not help himself. Yesterday in the preview, I described him as a WWE superstar. Well, you saw that. He did some moves and smiled and posed, and it was stupid for him to be doing that in, a tournament match. Yes, I know all of this is predetermined. Yes, I know all of this is fake. However, you would think if you were going to be in this tournament, you would at least act the part. Okada saved that for after the match. This match was probably the best one of the night as far as going back and forth, them playing to each other's strengths. But Okada hit the Rainmaker for the win and then proceeded to receive his flowers, is what the Japanese audience says. He received his accolades, and the fans really were excited for him. So, last night started at 4 a.m., finished up about 7:10, 7:15 Eastern Standard Time. So, I talked to you guys a little bit about G1 tournament fatigue. I finished day one. I was excited. I was pumped. I never really thought that I would have a problem on night one, and I didn't. I had watched, like I told you guys, WWE SmackDown. It was horrible. Watched AEW Rampage. It was okay, but compared to SmackDown, it was a little better. And then I stayed up and recorded some new podcast episodes for you guys for the Daily Sports Betting Overtime and for Pro Wrestling Overtime. I listened to some previews and some quick reactions from other podcasts. None that I was really excited about. Guys, you really, if you're going to listen to anything on the G1 besides me, really want to listen to Dave Metzler, Wrestling Observer Radio, Wrestling Observer Live with Brian Alvarez, and also, I'm trying to think of another Voices of Wrestling. Any of their commentators and almost any of their podcasts on the G1 are excellent. And I'll be honest with you, I'm using a lot of Voices of Wrestling information, so I really do trust them. Now, as far as tonight opens up with the B block, and it's gonna be Tomohiro Ishii, and that's what you're gonna hear me call him, Ishii, versus Taichi. Ishii, a lot of times he doesn't win a lot. He's been over here in America on an American tour, and a lot of people have really sang his praises, but when the casual viewer or the casual American wrestling fan tunes in, he wouldn't win, or he wouldn't win clean, or something like that. And they were like, why is this guy that big of a deal? Well, guys, he delivers top tier G1 performances for over the last 10 years, and he makes others look good. Because if you saw him on his American tour and he lost, you still felt like it was a great match, and it was a lot due to him. Now, he's kind of used in the G1 as a barometer. Are you ready to take that next step? Are you not? Can you have a good match with Ishii? Can you have a great match with Ishii? Last night he was in a tag team match, and you got to see him battle throughout the match. His nickname is the Stone, and so you really got to see him portray that last night. He wasn't battered or bruised up like I will expect him midway through this tournament, and definitely towards the end to be. So it's really good for tonight's match. You'll probably see Ishii at his best as far as moving around the room. I look for him to take it to Taichi, and this to be a short match. I don't think we're going to see an upset tonight. I think this is going to be probably the shortest of the 4 matches. Taichi is still looking for that breakout G1 tournament. This is his 4th G1, and he's never had a winning record. And in the tag team matches last night, he wasn't memorable. He was on the other side from Ichi, but I can't tell you any of his moves. I don't think in this B block, with the way it's set up, I don't think he's going to make any noise in it, and I don't think he's going to be a serious contender for winning it. He's got an 11-day gap between wrestling Sonata and then when he wrestles Chase Owens, and this is the second longest gap on the schedule. I think that actually hurts him. He doesn't seem to be a very powerful performer or someone that gets hurt easily. 11 days, I think, is going to hurt him. But then they did something weird to him, and he has a 0-day gap, meaning he goes back to back against wrestling Jay White, who's going to put a hurting on him, and then wrestling Great Okan. And I don't see him winning tonight's match with Ishii. Second match of the night, I am a little interested in. It's in Block A. It's Toru Yano versus Jonah. Toru Yano, he wrestles almost every G1 around. He's never been considered a serious contender for winning the block, but he does have a knack for playing the spoiler. He is a comedy act, and he makes no bones about that. He was even a comedy act in the press conference. And Yano's going to see his toughest competition yet by being in this A block. The wrestlers and reporters have been calling the A block the monster block or the Haas block. It was made to punish Okada. You've got Jonah in there, Jeff Cobb, Lance Archer, and then you've got some small fries in there with Okada and Tom Lawler. The problem with and for Yano is he's not a large man. So he's going to have to get really creative and really use some comedy to get some wins. Tonight's not his night though, because he's taking on Jonah. This is his first ever G1 tournament. He's in Japan for the first time since 2015, where he used to be a member of New Japan Pro Wrestling. You'll remember Jonah as NXT's Bronson Reed, and he was one of them that was fired. Since he was let go, he's been back on the indie circuit. He's been in Impact Wrestling. He's been in GCW. He's been on New Japan Strong. And he's been making his presence known. He's really been the talk of the wrestling scene, and I'm looking forward to him squashing Yano tonight. In that A block, he's never taken on most of it. The only person he's taken on is Jeff Cobb. Now, when you look at Jonah's schedule, he has an erratic schedule. He begins his tournament tonight, but then has 12 days off. No single matches. And doesn't have another match until July 30th. Then he's going to have 5 days away, and he wrestles after that 3 singles matches in 5 days between August 5th and August 9th. So he's going to have a little bit hard row to hoe, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with that. Tonight should not be a problem. Yano's going to try some comedy with him, and Jonah is going to shake his head no and punish him. So I look for Jonah to move on as far as this goes. Like last night, C and D are going to be explosive. The third match of the night is in the C block, and it is Zack Sabre Jr. versus Kenta. You should have heard of both of these names. They're superstars in New Japan Wrestling. Zack Sabre Jr. last year ran through the first half of his G1 tournament like a buzz saw. Guys, he is known as the submission master, and he proved that last year by submitting Shingo, Kota Ibushi, Great Khan. But then he hit a brick wall called Ishii, and Ishii kind of made him pay. He's really, Zack Sabre Jr. is shooting his mouth off this year, not only at his block, he was shooting it off at the D block. Specifically, Juice Robinson. He's never been able to win a block, and they think there's a possibility he could be a player in this year's block. His tournament ends this year, though, with Naito. And he's going to have additional motivation to beat Zack Sabre Jr. since Zack Sabre Jr. injured him last year. Now, Kenta, guys, you heard John Moxley calling him out late last year. He is unbelievable. He is the originator of Go to Sleep, which is CM Punk's finishing maneuver. And last year, he had a career high 12 points during the G1. He still couldn't win his block. And he is going to face his toughest block competition yet. I think he can wreak havoc on it. Kenta, like I said, was a superstar a lot of American wrestlers looked up to. He was in a car crash, and they named probably 4 or 5 broken bones and ligament and tendon damage that he had. He has been recovering from that. If you turn on the G1 tonight, which it's free again tonight, you will see a huge scar running down the left side towards his back side. Actually, it kind of starts on the left side of his back and kind of curves onto his side, I should say. Very large and really noticeable scar. So him even coming back from that, just unreal. But I think he makes some noise. He could shock Zack Sabre Jr. tonight. Like I said last night, these two were on opposite sides of the tag team battle. Kenta is a member of the Bullet Club, but these two went after each other last night, and then after the match, they probably argued, shoved, and yelled, threatened, cussed each other for a good 5 minutes after the match in front of the audience and all the way up to the ramp. So they, in real life, from what I understand, don't like each other. I think this is going to be an excellent match. The D block ends the show, and it is Shingo Takagi versus Juice Robinson. These two do not like each other. In 2021, Shingo, he entered the G1 kind of with a target on his back, because at that time he was the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. And then in 2022, he is entering in with what they're calling the Provisional KOPW 22 trophy. And a lot of people say he is not as good as what he was last year. I don't know that I agree, but I don't think the rest of the field is paying much attention to him. Last year, he was circled on a lot of people's schedule, and he got a lot of people's best shot because he was the champion. And they knew if they beat him and he ended up winning, they would get a chance for the championship. However, this year he's not the champion. And Juice Robinson made it very, very clear in the press conference that he doesn't care about Shingo. And I'm not hearing him being mentioned by a lot of wrestlers. So we have Juice Robinson coming in. He is, his nickname now is Rock Hard Juice Robinson. And he's been away kind of a year. He broke with David Finlay on Impact Wrestling. They were the Fin Juice. Juice Robinson is now a member of the Bullet Club. And you can see this has pumped new life into the Juice Robinson character. He's louder, he's more nefarious, he is crude, and he doesn't care to push buttons. Like I talked about yesterday, last night, he showed up with his United States Championship. The question, almost with most reporters, were would him playing around with the United States Champion, antagonizing and poking at Will Osprey, would it make him not focused on a G1 quest? Guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I think so. Last night, after his tag match, he proceeded to grab the microphone from Kevin Kelly and talk into the microphone about how rock hard Juice Robinson was going to win it all, blah, 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 and how he still had his United States champion. Then he proceeded to get into it with Shingo, his opponent for today. And Shingo didn't back down, as I think Juice Robinson thought he would. So I think tonight is going to be interesting. I think Juice Robinson's going to be one of the big stories of this tournament, so I don't see him losing tonight to Shingo. I look for them to tell the story of Shingo falling off after being the champion last year. Guys, I think the match of the night is going to be Zack Sabre Jr. versus Kenta, and I am looking forward to this. Guys, I'll be back tomorrow with a recap, and that's it. Because they're taking a break on Monday and Tuesday, the next night of competition will not be until Wednesday, and so you'll get your preview on Tuesday. If you have any questions, comments, problems, or protests until that fact, write me, let me know. I am at Pro Overtime. Excuse me, I almost said Pro Wrestling. Pro Overtime, 2 O's. Pro Overtime on Twitter. On Instagram, I'm Pro Wrestling Overtime, and email is prowrestlingot@gmail.com. Feel free to ask questions, or if you want to request anything, or for me to find out anything, please let me know. But I'm gonna go off to watch the G1. Like I said, I'll give you a preview tomorrow. So I'll be talking to you soon, and hopefully I see you somewhere down the road.